And I just burnt myself out completely. And I just thought, actually, I need to take a bit of a break and do something that's just creative, just for the fun of it, rather than for work. So I cancelled all the kind of jobs I had in the queue, and just decided to do a personal project, which was taking pictures of the other swimmers that I'd been meeting when I was going at my local beach, and just asking them, why are you coming here? What is it about this cold water swimming in Scotland that's, bringing you to the beach?
So we're really excited today to have Anna Deacon on our 292 Wellness podcast. Anna is a photographer and author based in Edinburgh, Scotland. And we met Anna at the Global Wellness Summit last year in St. Andrews. And Anna, it was just really fascinating to me. You have such a passion for wild swimming, and that's kind of the topic we're talking about today. And you're using your medium of photography to you've made a really very successful career with your passion of wild swimming and photography. So we want to kind of hear your story and dive in, so to speak.
Great. I live in Scotland. I lived in London for 20 years and was working as a photographer, and I moved back up to Scotland where my family are about 8 years ago, and sort of reconnected with living by the sea for the first time in my life. Actually, I spent a lot of time swimming in water inland when I was younger, but living next to the sea was a real change for me. And my cousin took me for a walk one day, and she's like, "Wait, let's go for a swim." And I was like, "Ooh, it's the sea, it's winter, it doesn't look very appealing." But we did, and it was great. And from that day on, I was really hooked. And so I started going quite regularly. This is probably 8 years ago now. And usually it would be meeting up with her, and we'd go to some beautiful, wild, remote beach. And she's an artist and I'm a photographer, and we'd both kind of go with our creative heads on and have long ambly walks, taking pictures of everything. And then we'd have a swim and then wander home. And it was just like a really special kind of nurturing time. But also at the same time, I sort of went through a period of burnout where I had just taken on far too much. And I think relocating cities and trying to get all the work I could possibly get all at once, and I just burnt myself out completely. And I just thought, actually, I need to take a bit of a break and do something that's just creative, just for the fun of it, rather than for work. So I cancelled all the kind of jobs I had in the queue, and just decided to do a personal project, which was taking pictures of the other swimmers that I'd been meeting when I was going at my local beach, and just asking them, why are you coming here? What is it about this cold water swimming in Scotland that's, bringing you to the beach? And while I'm doing it, I'm also swimming with them. I'm in my swimsuit. It's cold. I've got my camera in the water. It's not waterproof. So it was a bit of a risky business. But I found that, that connection came between us when I was also in the water. I wasn't photographing them from the land and, just like they were an object of interest. We were doing this together. And then I found through that process, people were telling me these amazing stories of, what the water was doing for them. So there was one lady who worked as a child psychiatrist, and she worked with some of the most tricky cases, and she was finding that it was actually too much some days, really far too much. And she would come down to the water and she'd go for a swim and sort of leave it there in the sea, and that was her kind of way of coping. And there was another lady I met at that time who had two young children, both with additional needs, and she was going through a difficult divorce, and the only time she ever had by herself was very, very limited. And she would go down to the sea and she would just take time just to, take some deep breaths and have a swim and just feel that she could just get herself back. There was lots of stories of people who were grieving, a lot of stories about grief, actually, and also pain relief, people who are struggling with joint ache in particular and kind of long-term pain. Were finding a relief in the water. And I found that myself as well, that it was helping me with some pain problems. So anyway, I started this project photographing these people, and I thought, maybe I could do an exhibition or something with it. I don't know what, maybe apply to do a master's or something like that. And eventually I thought, oh, maybe I'll just set up an Instagram account and I'll put the words with the pictures, you know, the stories with the images. And it was really powerful. It gained real momentum quite quickly. And then I got introduced to Vicky Allen, who is a friend of a friend, who is a journalist for a local newspaper. And she's really interested in wild swimming too. So this friend of ours said, oh, you should meet Vicky and maybe you should write a book together because she's looking for a new project. So we met, and within a year of that, we had a book out. And it was absolutely the most crazy roller coaster ride. Because together we then were able to kind of travel all over Scotland and do all these pictures and meet all these people, and her words and my pictures together, you know, and we created a book which did really well. It was a bestseller. And this is all pre-pandemic. And since the pandemic, of course, the wild swimming's gone wild. I mean, it's really everywhere here. It's huge, but it really wasn't then. It was a very niche thing. And I remember the publisher saying, we're taking a real risk on this because this is a very niche topic. I'm not sure how many people are going to buy this book, but we're just going to go with it, you know. So, and then we've now I've done 8 books in the last 5 years. So it's been a very busy time.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So that's the beginning of it all. Yeah,
that's great. What was the title of the first book?
So the first book was called Taking the Plunge, and the subtitle was The Healing Power of Wild Swimming for Mind, Body and Soul. So really it was like a sort of telling people's stories. You know, I'm not an expert swimmer by any means. I'm actually quite scared of swimming outside. I don't like going very deep, and I'm quite a cautious swimmer, I must say, but I'm good at telling stories, and I'm good at finding people's stories and capturing their them in a photograph, essentially. So that part of it was so exciting. Just seeing how it grew and all the stories collected together into this beautiful kind of coffee table book.
It's beautiful.
Exciting.
When we talk about, can you explain wild swimming? Is this where people are going and submerging themselves for a few minutes like a cold plunge, or are people actually swimming, or is it a mixture of both?
It's a real mixture of both, actually. I mean, I've got friends who are training for doing ice miles. They're swimming for long periods of time in the water and training. And there's other people who just go in and just go, have a quick few strokes and then jump out. I'm more of one of those. And then you do get people that will just do like a cold plunge, but outside, But again, the whole kind of research and science behind the whole cold plunge thing has come out of all of this, and you can get so many of the benefits from just going in a cold plunge, of course. But I think for me, the greatest part of it is being outside in nature. So, we call it wild swimming because if you say to someone here, you're going swimming, they just think you're going to go to the local sports centre and go to the pool there, heated, nice pool, changing rooms, all of that, chlorine and everything. But no, this is really a term for describing swimming outdoors somewhere a little bit, in the sea or a river or something like that.
And what kind of temperatures are we talking? What's the water temperature?
Okay, you're going to have to help me with the translation here, Ben. But I mean, in Scotland, in this time of year, in January, it's our winter. So fresh water, you'd be looking at anything between frozen ice, which we will also break and get in, and it might go up to 5 or 6 degrees. And then the sea's probably more around 7 or 8 at this time of year degrees.
That's probably 45, something like that.
Yeah. It's cold.
Yeah, that is cold. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cold. Yeah.
I mean, one thing I want to touch on that I can really relate to, because we said we met you at the Global Wellness Summit that was in St. Andrews last year, and we signed up for your wild swimming what would you call it, like experience?
Yeah.
Because I was like reading about it, and I was thinking to myself, I've done cold plunges before. I'm same like you. I'm a person that's actually scared of water, especially deep waters. I never like to be like really cold. So a couple of years ago, I kind of got myself more used to cold plunging and trying it out. and you build a more of a resilience. But the wild swimming intrigued me because open waters really scare me. And I was like, I'm going to try something that I'm not comfortable with. And I'm so glad I did, because obviously we met. And the experience, the difference of going into a body of water in nature and being surrounded by nature while you're doing it is such a fundamental experience. It's incredible. Just remember going into the ocean and seeing, like, looking up the birds flying over you. And it's just, there's this different connection where you suddenly connected with everything around you. Like, it's not just about you, it's about nature, it's about everything. And that to me was so fascinating. And I think that's, I can understand now the reason is the wild swimming being more powerful versus just a cold plunge indoors, because where else do you get that connection to nature? And that was that memory. I mean, it's still, I'm sitting here, it's still with me. And it's, that was really beautiful. Yeah. So thank you for challenging us to do it and providing that option. And it was really incredible.
Oh, it was a fun day, wasn't it? It was, and the morning before we had the most incredible sunrise, and we got down to the sea, and it was like a mill pond. It was completely crystal clear, and there was no movement. So the sea was just so gentle, and then there was this amazing sunrise. So the sea was just lit up orange and purple, and we swam next to this old castle ruin, as you remember, it's up on the hill behind us. It's a really ancient castle with all these birds flying ahead. But the castle was lit up bright orange with the sun. And it was just mind-blowing, you know. And obviously you can get the same physiological response from going in a cold plunge in your house. But that feeling of awe is something that you get almost every time when you swim outdoors. There's something, you know, unbelievably exciting about that. And also if you're a visual person like I am, you're always noticing that the sea, the sky, everything is different every single time. It's never going to be the same. And there's something that sort of keeps me interested. It keeps me excited. And if I take my camera in, I'm looking at the texture of the water and looking at the clouds and the sky and those things as well. I feel like they give me as much as the cold water does, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was. We did an impromptu one 2 days before where we done a yoga class as part of the course with lady from Kola, forgotten her name, and
Neela Kola.
Ashley
Kola. She did. They just said, "Oh, afterwards we're just going to jump into the sea. Do you want to do it?" And we were like, "Why not?" And I think that part of that was that, and doing that with you in that group were probably the two most memorable things from the trip, apart from playing a round of golf at St Andrews for me. But but it's you know, it creates emotions, and emotions create memories. And so much of this, we felt there was the community. And on your excursion that we did with you, there was the local group of ladies that do it daily. I think this is where your hat is from, isn't it? Yeah,
Bob and Blether. Yeah.
But I think maybe you can talk to that. There's so much community around it too. This isn't individual people just jumping in the sea. This is a whole community who are supporting each other in all kinds of ways.
Yeah, this has been something that we've always seen, but it seems to have increased dramatically over COVID. So, for example, we had a small group of us at my local beach in Edinburgh, and it's a really scummy little beach. It's not fancy at all. It's a city beach. It's next to a main road. It's not very pretty. But there was maybe a group of, 20 of us or something like that before COVID. And we have a Facebook group set up, and we'd arrange swims. And post-COVID, there's maybe, I think, 2,000 to 3,000 people now in the Facebook group. And that sort of number is the same. It's replicated in groups all over the UK. So it's become something that people have cottoned onto during lockdown, but then haven't left. They've kept going. And as a result, I think what's happened is more groups have formed smaller groups, because with a group of 2,000 people, it's unwieldy. You can't just kind of keep organizing big group swims. It's chaos. So smaller groups have come up through it. And one of the groups that I just have such affection for is the group called Blue Balls. And it was set up by a guy called Mark Miller, who is an extraordinarily fabulous photographer. And I knew him outside of this world. I knew him as a photographer first. And he was saying, he was struggling to find a way to make friends as an adult male who's got kids, in his sort of 30s, 40s. Where can he go to make new friends? That's a tough thing, especially for a lot of men. It can start to feel quite isolated, and you don't have a huge amount of time for yourself. If a lot of the time, if you're working and you've got a family and things like that. So, outside of sports and going to the pub in the UK, very much as you know, Ben, a pastime, it's where men go to spend time together. But it's outside of that, especially if you're trying to be sober, which a lot of the guys who subsequently joined the group are. So he put out a very sort of vulnerable post online saying, "Hey, I want to set up a group. Who's in?" It could have not happened, but people started coming, and he started this group, and it's just grown and grown and grown. And now there's groups all over the UK called Blue Balls, or they've got their own name, but it's something similar. And the idea is that you could have any kind of background, age, anything, and you all in the water at once. So when the water reaches that certain point, you're all in it together. Everybody knows that they're going through the same pain. And so the concept is that, they would all get together and they would talk before, and they would check in with each other. Because the suicide rate for men in that age group is the highest of any category in the UK, particularly. So the idea is to create a safe place where men can go and talk about what they're going through. And then all swim together. And as a result, now they go to these wild saunas together. There's a broga class, which is a yoga for bros, and it's like this whole community, and they've got merchandise. They've got these, we call them budgie smugglers, the little swim pants for men, and hats and all sorts. And of course, Mark photographs it all, and his pictures are fantastic. So, it's all documented. But there's so many groups like that. There's groups for there's one here, which is a charity that got set up, and there's particularly sort of targets young mums from a sort of difficult socioeconomic background. So it's basically allowing them to put their kids into a childcare. They're looked after. They take them to the beach. They provide everything they need: towels, hot drinks, swimsuits, even anything. And they take them swimming, and then they sit and make a fire, and they all have hot drinks and cake, and then they talk about how everybody's coping. And it's just been such an incredible community that has built up, and these mums have found it, particularly most of them gave birth during lockdown, so they missed out on meeting other mums, So there's groups for everything. I mean, believe me, they are incredible. As menopausal mermaids, they've all got great names as well.
I was going to say, share some more names. I love the names.
But the most recent book, The Ripple Effect, we named each chapter after a real group. And we talked about sort of men's mental health was one chapter, and menopause and women was another. And, we talked to various groups, but we use their names as the chapter titles because we just love them, just fun. It's a fun community, and it's so supportive. Yeah,
and it's just such an organic way how this comes together. When I think about the big movement of social wellness, and we hear about amazing clubs, and obviously in urban environments it's much harder to do something out in nature, where social wellness comes together, where, like you were saying, people, instead of going to the bar, they're going to more of a social wellness environment. You're taking cold plunges together, IV drips, whatever those things are. But what you're describing is almost like the basic source, the roots of it, because it's the same thing. It's social wellness, but it's just out in nature. But it's that same kind of concept. It's community and doing something together that makes you feel better instead of, I'm not saying that it's bad to go to the bar, but I think it's obviously more beneficial if you're cold plunging or exposing yourself to cold water than drinking alcohol. But I think it's just really amazing how that social wellness aspect is really is showing proof to how much it works and how much people need it and how much community is needed. And like you were saying, it's just like sharing those things and taking the water, because when you think about ancient wisdom, like water is known for taking away pain and anxiety and and emotions, and it's cleansing, and that's exactly what's happening.
Exactly. I mean, it's not a new thing, you know, and that's the problem I find with so much of the sort of wellness trends is that you have to really have money to do it, right? You have to have money to go on an IV drip and go to a cold plunge center and sauna and all of these things. And it just means it's quite, not everybody can afford to do it, and not everybody is able to access those things. And you know, what I love about this is it's just anyone can do it. It doesn't cost anything. And it's like, I'm really interested in biohacking. So I love trying all the things, the gadgets and the stuff. I love it. I'm really interested in it all. I try it all. But what I always find myself going back to is nature's biohacking. You know, when you're going down to the water, your feet are on the sand or the grass, you know, and in the sea, that's grounding. So we're connecting to the earth, we're grounding. That's a one biohack. You know, when you're getting in the cold water, you have to do breath work. You can't not. If you don't control your breath, you are going to panic, and that can be dangerous. So you have to do breath work. So that's another one, you know, and then you're getting the sort of the blue space. You know, we know that being in and around water is really good for us in mentally and physically, and there's all sorts of research on that. And also, if you're somewhere that's got trees and plants and things nearby, that's green spaces. We've got biophilia, we've got all these incredible kind of chemicals that come in and out, and then we've got all this, especially if you're by the sea, you've got the sea air, which is full of brilliant sort of so many things that are good for us, minerals and things like that. And then of course the cold plunge, so, and the morning light in your eyes, that's setting your circadian rhythm going. So you're just ticking all the boxes for, you know, biohacking, but it's free and it's quick as well. You know, you don't have to stay in for more than 2 minutes really to get all the benefits of the cold. So yeah, I mean, there's great additions. You know, I'm loving this whole wild sauna trend that's become huge here. I don't know if it's something there. Maybe it's too hot where you are.
Yeah, we live in a sauna.
Sorry?
We live in a sauna, so yeah.
Well, I can tell you there's one that's just opened up very near me, and it's on the waterfront in an old disused sort of factory area. And it's been taken over by all these sort of street food trucks. And then they've set up these 2 saunas with ice plunges and a cold shower. And it's near the sea. So it's a little bit more of a walk to the beach, but it is just the best because you're sitting in this sauna looking at the sea, and then you can just go out and go in the sea. And it's sometimes I've gone in the dark as well, and you've got all the stars. I mean, it's just, you know, that's my kind of sauna.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's very cool. I think you touched on something, like you said, the benefits there. It's free. I think you explained when we met you, isn't there a common law in the UK where you can travel over private land to access water or something like that?
In Scotland.
Oh, in Scotland.
But not in the rest of the UK.
Okay.
So we're very lucky here. We can really access any body of water that we want. In the UK and in Ireland, it's a lot more complicated because we've done these guidebooks to where to go in England, Wales, Ireland and Scotland. And the rules are quite different. So if there's a piece of water that you can access via a public footpath, then it's fine. But if you can't cross private land to get to it. But that doesn't stop people doing it. It's just that it's not legal.
Okay.
But it makes it more wild, so...
So some of those cool spots that you find out, you're describing those in your books as well of how to get to. And I think you and I were talking a little about sometimes the danger with that is if you show some really cool natural spots and a lot of people are using them, it's getting abused, unfortunately, as well. How do you kind of give away just enough so people can find spots, but maybe also having the kind of ethical thing in mind that you might not want to expose every part of nature that you find to masses of people?
Yeah, this is a real ethical dilemma because we were asked to write a guidebook, first of all for Scotland, of where to go swimming. And we really weren't sure whether we felt comfortable doing it. But what we thought was that someone's going to do it anyway. So why don't we do it? But we'll do it in the most ethical way that we can think of. And also it coincided with lockdown. So we couldn't really go to all of these places. So I was thinking, how can we write a book about all the places to swim? Well, we can't actually travel anywhere. So we had to really think about how to do this, and we had a deadline. And I thought, well, I've made friends with so many incredible swimmers on Instagram. I'm just going to ask them. So we split the country up into lots of different areas, and we found a swimmer in each area and got them to tell us their top 3 places. And the way the book works is that for example, you might go to Orkney, which is the islands off the very, very north of Scotland. And we spoke to a lovely swimmer there, and she told us a bit about her story, her best 3 places, and then where to kind of go and get a good cake and where's a good place to park. So you're getting local knowledge. But with that comes the responsibility of the local person knowing this place is actually fine. This can handle a certain amount of visitors. This other place, there's no way I'm putting that in a book. So we were very careful about which places we left out, because there's definitely some places I've been to that I would never tell anyone how to get there because they're so beautiful. But, the parking is minimal and it's actually quite hard to find. It also can be quite dangerous if you go at the wrong time. So there's definitely lots of things to consider. I mean, it is a problem with Instagram and TikTok, I think, and just general tourism. That when something goes viral, it's gonna happen. Places get ruined, and it's very difficult landscape to navigate, literally. But I feel like we did the best we could, and we did the first guidebook for swimming in Scotland, and I think we were very careful, and I haven't heard any bad reports of any of the places being swamped by people. So hopefully we did an all right job there.
I mean, that's a really nice way of doing it as well, because like you said, you consciously choose which places can take it, but then also leaving a little bit of that discovery, because I think that's part of it as well, that when you're so passionate about it, your intuition is going to guide you to those hidden places as well. And that's a little bit of discovery. If everything is kind of laid out to you, I think that takes a bit away from that adventure and just finding things as well. I mean, it must be amazing to find one of those secret spots. I think that's part of it too. So I think that's
and we also have a section in the book where we suggest ways that you can find places yourself. This is a way to do it. You follow this on a map and you look out for these symbols. And because a lot of people have never used a real map before, it's all online, So we're just like, actually get an old Ordnance Survey map, look at the map itself and follow the lines and and go on an adventure, take everything you need and see what you can find,
That's a big part of it, really.
It really is. Like you mentioned earlier, there's so many trends in wellness now, and it's exploding. And obviously, we hear the numbers at the Global Wellness Summit of it's going to be valued at $9 trillion by 2028, which is insane. We have lots of different conversations with people in different fields, and a lot of people are always looking for the magic pill or the quick fix. And I think you can get a pretty transformational experience from doing wild swimming, because one thing I noticed is that those endorphins that you feel last a long time throughout the day. They really stay with you. Can you talk a little bit about how, going back to when you discovered it, and how it really has positively impacted your life that's kind of meaningful?
Well, yeah, I think the thing to say as well is that what I read recently is that the dopamine that you get from the cold water is equivalent to taking cocaine, but it lasts for 10 times longer in your system. So that's, again, I think a reason why we found so many people with addictions are coming to this as a form of recovery, because what they're finding is they're still getting that hit that they've been chasing, but it's lasting and it's keeping them there. And so it's a healthy way to sort of, to get that essentially and replace one for the other. But for myself, what I've found is not only is it just on a sort of physical level, I found it really helps with sciatica. I get quite bad sciatica and joint pain, and it's really helped me with that. And it's funny because my grandmother often spoke about her mother, who my family are from Shetland, up in the very, very north of Scotland, and these islands at the very north, so sort of closer to Norway actually than Scotland. And her mum used to swim in the water for her rheumatoid arthritis when, way back. And she always remembers that. And I just think that's such an interesting thing, that so many of these old wisdoms, we've lost them along the way. And actually, when you look back, everyone was doing this back then. It's just that we didn't have a package, a nice sort of wellness package to put it in. So for me, it's the physical relief. I find it's very good sort of at calming my mind, with doing the breathing and all of that when I'm going in the water. You can't really think about anything else when you're trying to navigate your way through very cold water. But also just as a kind of creative person as well, just, what I get from being in and around water, and especially with my camera or even painting and things, I just find that's it fills my cup up, my creative cup. And then finally, just the friends I've made, most importantly, I've made such an incredible bunch of friends from this all over the world, actually. And it's taken me to some amazing places like the Global Wellness Summit. I mean, I never imagined myself going to something like that and sitting next to Wim Hof and having breakfast together one morning. Chatting about wild sport. I mean, it's been crazy. It's taken me on an adventure that I never thought I'd go on. I mean, it's been quite a ride.
It's amazing.
It's given me a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So what I find really beautiful when I think about that, in the beginning, you were saying that you were burned out and you put almost the pressure of work and doing something for other people aside, and you just really tapped into your own authenticity, into what your heart was guiding you to do. And that was the springboard now for the success that you have. You didn't set out to be an author, to do all those things, but it's just, you were just you, and you just really came from your kind of true nature and your instinct. And that has led you onto this really amazing path. And I think that's just really interesting. And I think that's really important for all of us, because I think success is such a big thing that we're all trying to be something, do something, and sometimes and often for other people. And what other people want is a product. But just really stopping and just doing something out of passion, that's where the most seed of success really lies. I think that's where everything comes, where you're doing it for other reasons than just the end result of succeeding. And I think that's just really beautiful to see how you have manifested that. And one thing I want to get to that, where there is that big companies like Mini, for example, they hired you for their campaigns. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because they've obviously seen something in those images that you're doing that's really connecting with people. But you probably wouldn't have dreamt when you started doing that you get an advertising deal with Mini at the end of it. So that kind of want to bring those two things together, of just stopping to chase things, being yourself, and then getting a much bigger end goal than you normally probably would have dreamt of.
Oh, I mean, I would never have seen this coming. And I've been on, I got interviewed. You'll know this lady, Ben, Jo Wiley. She's like an icon here, especially our age, growing up. She's a sort of music icon, and she has a radio show, and I've been on it twice in the studio live, which is totally madness. Like, it's terrifying. But, that I would never have seen that coming as a result of a burnout and then a sort of project, and I mean, we've done some incredible things. I can't even think what they all are, but remind me your question. I've just lost my trail.
The advertising with Mini.
Yes, Mini. So that came about. They were launching a new car, and it's the first one in years that they'd had a complete redesign. And one of the things was this big screen on the dashboard. And it had this function where you could sort of change it to be different colors to sort of suit your mood. So, But the problem was they had to launch it, but they didn't have the cars yet. So the campaign was trying to sort of think, how can we represent these different, feelings without actually showing them in a car? So they basically contacted like 6 or 7 of us, different people that they found online, and asked us to represent one of the kind of functions of it, if you know what I mean. So mine was like a kind of nature one. So they basically just said, we'd like you to make a film about who you are and why you go swimming. And then they topped and tailed it with pictures of the car once it was ready. And it was crazy. I mean, to get a campaign like that, I went to a beautiful beach. It was actually frozen at the time. The sand was frozen. And I took my daughter with me, my teenage daughter, and my husband and my dog. And we filmed it on my camera. And I've never filmed on my big camera before. So I sort of set up the shots, and I got my daughter to do it and help me with it. I mean, we just did it ourselves. We edited the whole thing, and then they helped me write a script, and we did it all. It was quite an interesting process, but would never have dreamed that, But I've also done some work with other bigger brands as well since, and it is a nice side hustle, if you like. You've got to make some money in this world, but the thing that's interesting, though, that I've found is that it's gone from being, like I said, when I first got the publishing deal, like a very niche thing, to being really not niche at all anymore. And, I don't know if you saw when you landed in the UK, in Heathrow Airport, there's a huge billboard from HSBC Bank, and it's got a lady of a certain age jumping into the water off a jetty, with a swim hat on. And it says, "Is this a midlife crisis or a midlife opportunity?" And it was so interesting. And I saw that. And then Bank of Scotland have done it. Lloyds Bank, another big bank here, they've just done a whole campaign that my friend was working on with all these horses, and they've got wild swimmers in the river, and these horses go in, and it's this whole thing. And then also I noticed that I think it was a perfume brand. I think it might have been Chloe. One of the big brands recently also did a whole filmed campaign of these 5 girls or whatever driving, going to a lake, going swimming together, sitting around a fire. And that was the whole campaign. So it's really interesting to see. Or Wagamama, the food company, did a whole thing about it, and go to Wagamama's after your wild swim. It's become a big thing. There's TV shows about it now, and it's just interesting to see how the big brands are trying to sort of tie into the authenticity of it, I suppose, and relate it back to their brand. It's interesting seeing how they do that, and whether it works or not, I don't know. But yeah, you can see the change, I mean, even the celebrities that they're always quoted now in all the magazines, it's the hot new trend, and all these people are doing it. And, it's, it's definitely, it's grown.
It's amazing. How, remind me again, how often do you go out to swim when you do more on a regular?
It just really depends. There's times where I'll just go every day, but there's other times like now where I haven't been for a while. I've been sort of laid up with a bit of a virus, and I think sometimes you have to just listen to your body and say, the cold water's too much for me right now. But it will be there when I'm ready to go back. And for now, I still go to the beach every day, and I go beach combing. That's my other hobby. I just look for sea glass and china, and I come back with pocketfuls of stuff that I find. It's, it's a lovely passion. It's very mindful, very peaceful. I'm next to the water. But yeah, it's definitely something I will get back into when I'm back to full health, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that how you're describing that. It kind of that you understand when your body isn't right for your body, and it's not, I think when you're so in intuition with it and in tune, because it's not just I'm not doing it because it's uncomfortable today. It's just really knowing that it's not the right thing for your body, but still connecting with the same place, still getting up and going to the ocean, still getting that experience and stay connected with it. But I think really by doing things like that challenge us, that connect us to nature, we develop a little bit more that intuition and body awareness and really understanding when something is right and isn't right for us. I think that's a big part of it, because we can be very disconnected and either be very disciplined about something or not disciplined at all. And it's not really about that. It's about that balance in between that we develop.
I mean, I've pushed through before, and I've done challenges like swim every day in December or something like that. And actually, it has really pushed me too hard. And, I found myself getting a bit unwell because it is hard on your body. You need to recover from it, because especially when you're going in such cold temperatures, and the amount of time you can handle each day completely depends on how you are. Some days you can, be full of energy and you can swim and you can stay in and you feel really resilient. And other days you really can't stay in for very long. And it so much depends on how much you've slept and whether you've eaten and, what your stress levels are and things like that. You have to be in tune with your own body, because people always say, how long should I stay in for? And there used to be a sort of a saying of 2 degrees per minute or something. I can't remember what it is. 2 minutes per degree or something like that. I can't remember. Some equation, but it's been really disproved that just isn't something you can use, and there isn't really a safe way to do it. You have to be listening to your own body. You have to be very, very in tune with how you're feeling and know what to look out for, what are the danger signs, when to get out, things like that. So I think it gets you very in tune with yourself, and that's been a really big thing for me, actually, just understanding what I can manage and what I can't.
I was listening to Dr. Andrew Huberman. He was reading about a study where they were saying 11 minutes a week of cold water exposure is the optimum. I don't know how they measure that or what it's about, and it's not all in one go. So if you split up 11 minutes across a week, that's what they seem to think is the optimal exposure. So it might be a good starting point. I know we've been doing it in our pool here in Scottsdale at the moment is about 48, 49. So
Fahrenheit, it was just around 10 degrees maybe?
Yeah, 8 or 9 degrees now. So it's pretty fresh. Pretty cold. Yeah, it is pretty cold. Yeah.
You wouldn't think of that, Eric, but the desert does get chilly in the winter,
like really in the mornings. Chilly in the winter. So yeah, we started off, it was a minute, then it was a minute 15, a minute 30, and we've just been trying to add. But you're right, you got to control your breathing. Anissa's way better at it than me by just calmly going into it. But I'm amazed. Yeah. I think there's 2 things I've really discovered this year is breath work and cold exposure. And those 2 together, they're really quite profound when you do it regularly and you understand how it can impact you in so many different positive ways. So that was last year, 24. So yeah, we're keen to carry on. Unfortunately for us, come give it a couple of months and our pool won't be that cold anymore, but
we'll be doing the hot therapy outside, and then we just need to find a cold plunge inside.
We do, yeah.
Just work with what you got.
But I think the study you were talking about that Huberman talked about is a woman called Susanna Soberg, and she's in Denmark, and I think it was from her study where she looks at brown fat and how actually it increases your brown fat, which is the good fat, is the fat that you want, and actually it sort of helps burn the other fat that you don't want. It's and I think her study said, I can't remember, it was so many minutes of sauna time and then 11 minutes of cold water.
Yeah.
And that was this kind of based on this research she'd done of the hot cold exposure. But what you said about the breath work, I'm studying to be a breathwork coach at the moment as a little thing that I'm doing as an aside, which I'm really enjoying. But what I found is that I'm someone who's always been terrified of public speaking of any sort ever, and even doing something like this, it still frightens me a bit. But when I first started doing this project, I got asked if I would come and do a talk at Creative Edinburgh, which is a sort of like a free event that for creative people that you can go along, and they get a different speaker every month, and it's based on a theme, and the theme was water, so they invited me. And I'd never done anything like that in my life. And it terrified me. It terrified me so much. But I just thought, I'm just going to do it. This is before the book, before anything like that. It was just a small project at the time. And I did sort of say in my, I've never done anything like this before. This is one of the most terrifying things I've done in my life. But what the cold swimming has taught me is that it's the same fear that you have when you're going in the water. And if you can learn to control that racing heart, that feeling that you're about to go into a terrifying situation, it's the same feeling you have when you're about to go and do a public speaking engagement as you do when you're about to go in really cold water. It's real trepidation. You think, why am I doing this? What am I doing? This is crazy. I don't want to do it. And then you start doing it and you can feel the panic coming. So you have to teach yourself to breathe. And I found myself doing that, in these situations. And that's been another thing that I've found from doing this journey, is that I'm actually able to handle doing these situations. And speaking at the Global Wellness Summit was terrifying. I mean, it was in front of this room full of CEOs and, very important people. And but actually it was fine, because I did some breath work on the way up, and I was just before we went on, and I felt actually okay. So it's been a really nice thing to find that, and that, in fact, even this October, I went to Universal Studios in LA with my family, and I went on a ride, and I don't like these rides at all, but I went on this ride, and they were saying, oh, it won't be so bad. It just might be a bit fast, but it's not really a scary one. And I hated it so much. And I remember I got to this certain point, and I was sat next to my son, and I shut my eyes, and I was going, and he was like, Mum, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't like it. But I did my breath work, and then we did the whole ride again backwards.
Oh, no.
I knew it was about to happen. And I just was like, this is no worse than just going into cold water. I'm just going to do my breathing. And they were laughing at me, but I coped, but it does help you sort of tap into that side of yourself, and more readily, because you're doing it frequently. When every time you go in the water, you're kind of, learning how to calm your panic. So yeah. It's useful in other places too.
Absolutely.
It really is. And I think it shows when you push through those fears, and we've all had them, we've had them a lot too, that even starting this podcast, we were fearful in the beginning, but once you push through, you realize life has so much more to offer if you can just break through some of those fears. And we always think of fear as it's false evidence appearing real. And once you push through it, life can be so much more rewarding and fulfilling. And so, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's so many things I think if I'd said no to, which is my first instinct, no, because it's too scary, then I would have never gone to the Global Wellness Summit, and I would never have met you guys and all the other people I've met. There's so many things where I almost said no and I didn't. And as a result, I've pushed through the pain and the fear, and all of these things have come. And it's the same with all of this sort of swimming. It was never the plan to be an author. It was never something I ever thought I could achieve. And, but saying yes more and daring to take risks, I think, is a lesson we can all live by, I think.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Well, Anna, thank you so much. You got a beautiful story, and it was such a pleasure to meet you, and we're so glad we did. We're going to share all of your social media and links to all of your books in the show notes for this. So we're looking forward to hopefully everybody buying your book and getting inspired to jump in the cold waters.
You definitely inspired us to continue it here in our way of doing it in the cold pool.
I love it. There's no wrong way. There's no wrong way. It's all right. Everything. There's no wrong way of doing it.
I'm still wearing my yellow hat in the pool, so it keeps me connected to the St. Andrews group.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, perfect. They'll love to hear that as well. They're lovely girls. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's been such a pleasure. And then, one note on, I love the way of the natural biohacking. I'm just going to go back to the recording and go back what you said about that, because I think it was so spot on. So I think that's really a big one for me to take.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Well, that's the book I'm writing next.
Amazing.
That's my book I'm working on at the moment. It's about nature's biohacking. So
Brilliant.
hopefully that'll come out sometime in the next couple of years.
Amazing.
Amazing. We'll have you back for that.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Oh, well, great to chat. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.